Stop. Look at your phone. Look at the silence on the screen. Feel that anxiety crawling up your chest because she hasn't replied yet. Because something shifted and you didn't even notice when it happened. You believe that if you are kind enough, available enough, and patient enough, she will stay. You believe love is a transaction of goodness. That if you give everything, she is obligated to appreciate it. But look at the results now. The more you give, the less she values it. The more you explain, the less she listens. The more you chase, the faster she pulls away. This is not bad luck. This is not her fault. This is physics. You were never taught how power actually moves in relationships. You were taught fairy tales. You were taught that vulnerability is strength, and that patience always wins, and that love conquers everything. And now you are sitting here, confused, drained, and invisible. So let's do something different. Let's be honest about how this actually works. I'm going to give you 5 brutal truths about love, desire, and the invisible architecture of every relationship you've ever been in. These are not tricks. These are not pickup lines. These are structural realities that nobody had the courage to tell you. Once you see them, you cannot unsee them anymore. Let's start with principle 1, which is the validation addiction, the root of everything. Before we talk about power dynamics, scarcity, or walking away, we need to cut to the actual disease. You are addicted to external validation. Not metaphorically, neurologically. Every time she replies, your dopamine spikes. Every time she doesn't, your cortisol floods. You have handed another human being the chemical keys to your own nervous system, and you call this love. Nietzsche had a word for this state. He called it slave morality, the psychology of a man who defines his worth through the eyes of others, who measures himself by how much he is needed, wanted, chosen, who has outsourced the fundamental question, am I enough, to someone who is equally lost, equally searching, equally human. Machiavelli saw the same weakness from a different angle. He wrote that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those willing to be deceived. The validation addict is the easiest man in the world to deceive, not because he is stupid, because he is desperate, and desperation makes you blind to everything except the thing you are desperate for. This is not love. This is two people using each other as mirrors because neither can stand to look at themselves directly. The validation addict does not love the person. He loves the feeling of being chosen by the person. And the moment she stops choosing, he collapses, not because she was essential, because she was structural. He built his identity on top of her approval, like a house built on water. Nietzsche's answer was not to find better approval. It was to undergo a complete revaluation, to burn the need itself, to reach a state where the question, does she approve of me, becomes not painful to answer, but simply irrelevant. Machiavelli's answer was identical in structure, different in language. He wrote that a prince who relies on the goodwill of others has no foundation, none. The man who needs her to see his value will never have real power in any relationship, because he entered the negotiation already defeated. Kill the need, not the emotion, not the desire, the need. That man is almost impossible to find, which is exactly why he is impossible to forget. Let's move for principle 2. Dependency is the cage you built yourself. Every relationship hides a silent question. Who needs who more? That question decides everything. The moment your emotional stability becomes dependent on another person's behavior, you stop being a partner. You become a hostage, and hostages don't get respect. They get managed. You texted first again. You explained yourself again. You tolerated something that bothered you and said nothing. Again, you told yourself it was love. It was patience. It was maturity. It wasn't. It was leverage being transferred. Every time you prioritized keeping the peace over keeping your self-respect, you handed over a piece of your power, slowly, invisibly, until one day you look up and realize you are negotiating your own worth with someone who stopped seeing it long ago. Machiavelli was ruthless on this point. He wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, not because love is worthless, but because love built on your neediness is the most fragile foundation imaginable. The man who is loved because he gives everything can be unloved the moment he stops giving. The man who is respected because he stands for something cannot be so easily moved. He also wrote something most people overlook. He said that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. You must be both, the lion who knows his own strength, the fox who sees the trap before he steps in it. Right now, you are neither. You are prey. You walked into the trap of your own emotions with your eyes wide open and called it romance. Jung called this projection. You are not just loving them, you are loving the missing pieces of yourself that you see reflected in them, the strength you haven't built, the validation you haven't given yourself, the identity you haven't fully formed yet. And whoever is most incomplete attaches the hardest. The solution is not to love less, the solution is to become more. Build the identity that doesn't require external confirmation to stand. Fix the wound that makes you cling. Because a man who is whole does not beg to be chosen, he simply is, and lets others decide if they can keep up. And now, Principle 3, scarcity is not a tactic, it is a truth. Here is the most brutal economic reality of desire. If air were sold, you would only pay for it if you were drowning. Right now, in her life, you are free air. You are everywhere. You are always available. You respond instantly. You clear your schedule the moment she shows the slightest interest. You think you are showing devotion. Psychologically, you are signaling low value. Machiavelli understood this at the level of statecraft. He wrote that the prince who is seen too often is no longer feared. The king who walks among the common people without purpose becomes common himself. Presence without power is just noise, and you have been making a great deal of noise. He also wrote that men value things in proportion to the difficulty required to obtain them. This is not manipulation. This is the architecture of human desire going back to the beginning of recorded civilization. Machiavelli didn't invent this law. He simply refused to pretend it didn't exist. When you are constantly present, you rob her of the most powerful drug in the human brain, imagination. When you are absent, her mind fills the space. She wonders what you are doing, who you are with, whether you are thinking about her. In that uncertainty, she builds a version of you that is more compelling than anything you could perform. But you destroy that space. You flood it with availability and anxiety and effort. Nietzsche framed it differently. He said that the secret to harvesting the greatest fruitfulness from existence is to live dangerously. The man who is always available is never dangerous. He is furniture, comfortable, familiar, and utterly easy to take for granted. The man who is genuinely hard to reach is hard to reach because he is building something. His mission comes first. His discipline comes first. His standards come first. She is not an afterthought, but she is also not the main character of his story. That is not cruelty. That is self-possession. And self-possession is the rarest thing in the modern man, which is exactly why it is so devastatingly attractive. Now, Principle 4. Destroy the pedestal. It is destroying you. There is a fatal error running in your operating system. You were taught, by culture, by movies, by well-meaning people who didn't know better, that the way to win a woman is to worship her, to place her above you, to make her feel like the most important thing in your universe. And so you do, and it repels her every time. Machiavelli had no patience for this kind of thinking. He wrote that the prince must see the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. He wrote that whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past, and the past is clear. The man who worships is always eventually abandoned by what he worships. He understood something even darker. He wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, and above all, they respond to what is in front of them, not to what is deserved. The man who gives everything is not rewarded with loyalty. He is rewarded with contempt, because contempt is the natural human response to a power vacuum. When you place her on a pedestal, you create a power vacuum directly beneath her, and she will fill it, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Nietzsche called this the will to power, not the desire to dominate others, the fundamental drive of every living thing toward expansion, toward growth, toward more. When you make yourself small, you are not being humble, you are being an obstacle to the natural movement of power. And nature removes obstacles. Take her off the pedestal. Look at her with level eyes. Disagree with her when you disagree. Challenge her when she is wrong. Hold your standards with the calm certainty of a man who knows his own value. The man who is willing to lose her rather than compromise his self-respect is the man she cannot stop thinking about, because he is the first man who made her feel like she had to earn something. That is not arrogance. That is the foundation of real respect. And without respect, there is no love, only performance. Last but least, Principle 5, the ultimate power, the willingness to walk away. We have reached the core of everything. The single most powerful position a man can occupy in any relationship is simple. It cannot be faked. It cannot be performed. It can only be built. The absolute, genuine, unshakable willingness to walk away from anything that compromises his integrity. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must never rely on the goodwill of others, only on his own strength. The moment you need her to stay, she owns the negotiation. The moment you prefer her but can survive without her, the frame shifts entirely. Not because you played a move, because you actually changed the structure of the situation. He also wrote that it is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. You are waiting to be chosen so you can feel worthy. Machiavelli is telling you that you have it exactly backwards. Build the worth first. The choice follows, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, something better does. Nietzsche goes further. He says that what does not kill me makes me stronger. But here is the part nobody quotes. He is not talking about surviving pain. He is talking about metabolizing it, turning it into fuel. The man who walks away from a relationship that was slowly hollowing him out and uses that pain to forge something harder. That man is doing exactly what Nietzsche meant. Most men stay in situations that are slowly destroying them because they are afraid of the void. They tolerate disrespect. They accept less than they deserve. They tell themselves it's love when it is really fear. Fear of the void, fear of being alone, fear that nothing better is coming. You cannot fake the willingness to walk. She will know. Women have an almost preternatural ability to sense when a man's boundaries are real and when they are theater, which means the only real path is to actually build a life so full, so purposeful, so rich with direction that losing any one person is painful but not fatal. A life where your options are real, where your self-worth is not on the table in any negotiation, where your answer to disrespect is not an argument but a door. Build the kingdom first, not for her, for you. If she wants to be part of it, she will rise to it. If not, the gate is open. Build the kingdom. Let them qualify. Look back at everything we just covered. Killing the validation addiction, destroying dependency, embracing scarcity, dismantling the pedestal, the willingness to walk. Notice what every single principle has in common. None of them are about her. Every single one is about you. This is the truth that Machiavelli buried in plain sight across every chapter of The Prince. He wasn't writing about controlling kingdoms. He was writing about controlling the one thing that actually determines every outcome in your life. Yourself, your impulses, your fears, your desperate need to be liked, chosen, validated by forces outside of you. Nietzsche said it even more directly. He said that the individual who has organized the chaos of his own passions and given style to his own character is the most powerful thing in existence. Not the man who learned the right lines, not the man who mastered the right tactics, the man who looked at his own chaos, his neediness, his fear, his craving for approval, and organized it, shaped it, subjected it to his own will. You cannot control another person. You can manipulate variables, you can play games, but the games always end, and what remains is what you actually are underneath them. The men who seem to move through relationships with effortless authority are not running psychological operations. They have simply done the work. They know who they are. They know what they will and will not accept. They are the source of their own stability, their own validation, their own direction. That is not dark psychology. That is just becoming a man. Machiavelli's prince did not take the throne by accident. He prepared, he suffered, he made ruthless decisions about what he was willing to sacrifice and what he was not. And then he moved, not with desperation, but with the calm certainty of a man who has already decided who he is. You have that same choice right now. Stop begging to be chosen. Build something worth choosing. The work starts now. Mindful,